Saria was the daughter of a great queen, born into a world where every choice she made carried the weight of her people. She lived in a kingdom far from Earth, where traditions were not just customs, but rules carved into stone. In her culture, a princess was not free to love as she pleased. Her marriage was expected to be an alliance, a union that would keep peace and strengthen bonds between families and clans. From the day she had grown old enough to understand, she knew her life would never fully be her own. Now the time had come for her to choose a mate. The council pressed her daily, reminding her of her duty. They spoke of powerful suitors from her own kind, noblemen, warriors, and scholars who carried names of respect. They told her that her choice would secure the kingdom's stability. But inside, Saria's heart was uncertain. She had listened to their words, yet when she looked at those who sought her hand, something felt missing. What troubled her even more was the thought that a human might be among her options. Humans had arrived on their world not many years ago. They were strangers once, visitors from far away, but over time they had earned a place among her people. Still, many distrusted them. They were different in form, in voice, in habits. And though they had fought beside her kingdom in battles and helped in times of need, to choose one as a mate seemed unthinkable to most of her kind. But Saria could not stop her mind from wandering. She had seen humans before, walking in the training fields, working side by side with her people, living quietly in the settlements near the capital. They were smaller in number but strong in spirit. She remembered their eyes most of all. Unlike the nobles who came to her throne room with rehearsed words, the humans carried a look of sincerity that unsettled her. It was as if they spoke more through their silence than through grand speeches. Still, she could not deny her doubts. 1,000 questions kept her awake at night. Could a human truly understand her ways? Could they stand beside her in the burdens of royalty? What if she chose wrongly, and her people saw it as weakness? The weight of her crown seemed heavier with every sunrise. One evening, as the stars rose above the palace towers, Saria walked alone in the garden. The air was cool, and the scent of night-blooming flowers filled the paths. She let her thoughts drift, her hands brushing the petals, her heart restless. She imagined herself with one of the noble suitors her council favored. The picture felt hollow, lifeless, like wearing armor that was too heavy and did not fit. Then she imagined a human, though she did not yet know which one. The picture was strange, uncertain, but it stirred something in her chest. Was it curiosity? Was it hope? She could not name it, but she felt it all the same. The uncertainty gnawed at her. She remembered the council's warnings. Do not risk the future of the kingdom for the sake of something so fragile as curiosity. They believed love could not be the foundation of leadership. It must be duty, order, and tradition. Saria wanted to believe them, yet deep inside she longed for something real, something not built by the council's plans but by her own heart's choice. Her mother, the queen, noticed her struggles. One night, the queen came to her chambers and found her staring out the window at the stars. "You are troubled," her mother said softly. Saria did not deny it. She admitted her doubts, her fears, her confusion about what was right. The queen listened patiently, her face calm and wise. Then she said, "Every ruler must carry the weight of duty, but not every ruler is brave enough to listen to the voice inside. Do not choose with fear, my daughter. Fear is a chain. Choose with wisdom, but also with truth." Her mother's words gave her comfort, yet they did not erase the uncertainty. Days passed, and the pressure grew. The suitors came and went, each presenting themselves with confidence, each speaking of power, wealth, and influence. Yet none of them reached her heart. She felt as if she were listening to echoes in an empty hall, loud but hollow. Then came whispers of a human soldier. Saria had not yet spoken to him, but she had seen him during training drills. His name was Marcus. He did not stand out among the rest at first glance. He was not the tallest, nor did he wear his strength like a boast. Yet there was something in the way he carried himself, steady and sure. He encouraged others, fought with focus, and when he rested, he did not seek attention. He seemed content in silence, and that silence made her curious. But curiosity was dangerous. What would the council say if they even suspected she was thinking of a human? They would call it foolishness. They would say she was risking everything her ancestors had built, and so she kept her thoughts hidden, showing no one the storm inside her. Saria spent long nights wrestling with her heart. One part of her told her to follow the safe path, to choose one of her kind, to satisfy the council and avoid conflict. The other part whispered of something more, of the chance that perhaps, just perhaps, her destiny was not meant to follow tradition, but to break it. And so, she stood on the edge of choice, uncertain, afraid, yet drawn to the unknown. She did not yet know Marcus's heart, nor what fate awaited her if she ever allowed him close. All she knew was that doubt and hope had taken root together in her soul, and the decision that lay ahead would change not just her life, but the future of her kingdom. The days in the capital moved slowly, yet for Saria every hour seemed to carry new questions. She tried to busy herself with royal duties, listening to reports from the council, meeting with envoys, and visiting the outer districts of the kingdom. But even in the middle of her work, her thoughts drifted back to the humans who trained in the courtyards. Among them, one figure often caught her eyes without her realizing: Marcus, the human soldier. She first noticed him during a public drill. The soldiers, both alien and human, were practicing in the great field before the watchtowers. The air was filled with the clashing sound of blades and the stamping of boots. Nobles and citizens stood on the edges, watching the display of discipline and power. Most soldiers fought fiercely, hoping to impress the watching eyes. They shouted as they struck, eager for attention. Marcus, however, was different. He did not shout. His movements were not the fastest, nor did he display unnecessary flair. Instead, he was steady, precise, and calm, as though every strike had purpose. When others stumbled, he helped them rise. When one soldier lost his weapon, Marcus picked it up and returned it without hesitation, never using the moment to make himself appear superior. He fought not for glory, but to complete the task well. Saria had seen hundreds of warriors before, some far stronger than Marcus, yet none had made her pause in the way he did. There was something unusual in his manner. He seemed less concerned with being noticed, more concerned with being useful. In a court filled with endless speeches and empty promises, such quiet strength drew her in like a secret flame. Still, she tried to push the thought away. She reminded herself that he was human, and she was a princess of her people. A line of difference stood between them. The council had already been whispering about her hesitations. If they knew she was even watching a human soldier, they would be furious. And so, she kept her expression neutral, her gaze calm, as though she had not noticed him at all. But fate has its way of bringing paths together. One afternoon, Saria walked with her attendants along the garden path that curved near the training grounds. She kept her head high, speaking politely with those around her, but her ears picked up the sound of training beyond the walls. The clash of steel against steel, the rhythm of movement. It called to her. She slowed her steps, listening. Her attendants noticed and paused too. Through a small opening in the stone wall, she glimpsed Marcus again. He was sparring with another soldier, an alien larger and stronger than him. The fight was unbalanced, and the alien swung with heavy strikes that should have overwhelmed Marcus. Yet Marcus held his ground. He stepped lightly, used speed instead of brute strength, and deflected blows with patience. He did not rush to win, nor did he grow angry under the force of the attacks. At last, with one careful move, he disarmed his opponent. But instead of boasting, he offered his hand and pulled the soldier back up. The crowd watching clapped in approval, but Marcus only gave a small nod and stepped aside. Saria felt something shift within her. She had grown up around warriors who were quick to show pride, quick to speak of their own victories. But this human soldier showed no hunger for attention. His quietness was a language of its own, and though no words were spoken, Saria understood some part of it. Later that day, she overheard some attendants speaking about him. That human soldier, Marcus, one said. He has no desire for riches. He even refuses extra rewards offered to him. All he asks for is fair training and a place to serve. Another replied, strange for one in his position. Most humans here try hard to rise higher to win favor, but he seems content with little. Saria pretended not to listen, but their words stayed with her long after. She wondered what kind of heart could remain so calm in a world where ambition was everything. Her chance to see him more closely came during a ceremony held for the guards. The queen herself honored both alien and human soldiers for their service in keeping peace along the borders. Marcus stood among them, his uniform plain, his posture straight. When his name was called, he stepped forward. Unlike others who bowed deeply or shouted proud words, Marcus simply placed his hand over his chest and said, "I serve." That was all, nothing more. Yet the simple words seemed stronger than the long speeches that came before or after. From that day on, Saria could not ignore his presence. She found herself searching for him among the training soldiers, her eyes scanning for the quiet figure who stood slightly apart from the rest. He never approached her, never sought her attention, and perhaps that was why she was drawn to him even more. He did not chase what others chased. He simply lived with steady honor, and in that steadiness, he shone brighter than any jewel offered to her by the noble suitors. But Saria's uncertainty was still strong. She did not know him beyond what she saw. A soldier's discipline could hide many truths. Was he truly as sincere as he appeared? Or was this simply the way humans behaved? Careful and cautious among her people? She could not tell, and that made her hesitate. That evening she stood again in her chamber, staring out at the glowing city below. Her heart was unsettled. She remembered Marcus's calm face, his quiet words, his refusal to boast. For the first time, the idea of a human mate no longer felt as impossible as it once had, yet doubt clung to her. Could she risk the anger of her council for the chance of something so uncertain? As the moonlight poured across the floor, Saria whispered to herself, "I do not know his heart, but why does it call to mine?" She did not know that beyond the palace walls Marcus too was thinking of her, not as a princess to impress, but as a leader he respected. He had no idea that his simple ways had already begun to stir the heart of the one who would soon have to make the most difficult choice of her life. The kingdom had been peaceful for many weeks, but peace in those times was fragile, like glass that could shatter with a single strike. Trouble arrived without warning. Raiders from the outer lands, enemies who had long hated the queen's rule, launched a sudden attack near the border villages. They were ruthless, caring little for life, seeking only destruction and plunder. The news spread quickly to the palace. Messengers ran through the halls, voices urgent, carrying reports of smoke rising in the distance. The council gathered at once, their voices loud and panicked, arguing about defenses, strategies, and which soldiers to send. Saria sat quietly at first, listening, but inside her heart beat fast. She had always known her people's safety was her responsibility, and now the threat had arrived at their very doors. It was decided that a unit of soldiers, both alien and human, would march to protect the villages. Among them was Marcus. He did not argue, did not boast of his skills. He simply tightened his armor and prepared to go. When Saria learned that he would be among those sent, a strange unease filled her. She told herself it was only natural to worry for all her soldiers, yet she knew deep inside that her concern for him was different. The march was long, and when the unit reached the village, they found fire already devouring the houses. Children cried, families scattered, and raiders stormed through the streets with weapons raised. The soldiers rushed in, forming lines to push back the attackers. Chaos filled the air, clashing metal, shouts of anger, the crackling roar of flames. Saria had insisted on traveling near the unit with her royal guard, not to fight, but to see with her own eyes the courage of those who defended her people. From a safe ridge, she watched the battlefield below. Her gaze searched the lines of soldiers until it fell upon Marcus. He was in the thick of the fight, moving not with reckless fury, but with steady resolve. When one of his companions stumbled, Marcus pulled him to his feet. When a frightened child stood frozen in the path of danger, Marcus rushed forward, lifting the child in his arms and shielding them with his own body. He carried the child to safety, before returning to the battle without pause. His uniform was marked with dust and ash, his face determined. Seria's heart tightened. She had seen many warriors in battle before, and often they fought to prove themselves, to win glory, or to impress their leaders. But Marcus's every move carried only one purpose: to protect. He was not fighting for pride. He was fighting for life. As the battle raged on, Seria could not tear her eyes away. Each time Marcus rose against the chaos, her doubts grew weaker. If he could risk himself for strangers, children he had never met, villagers who were not, even his own kind, what greater proof of loyalty could there be? At last, after hours of struggle, the raiders were driven back. The flames were doused, and the cries of fear turned into sighs of relief. Families gathered together, clinging to each other in the ashes of what was left. The soldiers, weary but alive, stood in silence as the survivors thanked them. That night, as the smoke settled and the soldiers rested, Seria walked among them. She spoke with the villagers, offering comfort, reminding them that the kingdom would help them rebuild. Her royal guard stayed close, but her thoughts remained fixed on one man. She found Marcus sitting apart from the others, repairing a broken strap on his armor. For a long moment she stood watching him, debating with herself. Then, gathering her courage, she stepped forward. Marcus rose at once, bowing respectfully. "Your Highness," he said, his voice quiet. "You fought well today," Seria replied. "I saw you. You protected the children." Marcus shook his head. "Any soldier would have done the same." She tilted her head, studying him. "Not all would. Some fight for honor. Some fight to be remembered. You fought for something else." His eyes met hers then, steady and honest. "I fought because they needed me. That is reason enough." Those simple words struck her more deeply than any grand promise ever spoken in the council hall. They were not wrapped in flattery or designed to impress. They were truth, plain and unshaken. Seria found herself asking questions she had never dared to ask a soldier before. "Do you not wish for reward? For recognition?" Marcus gave a small smile, one that carried no pride. "I wish for peace. If the people are safe, that is reward enough. Recognition fades. Duty remains." The night was quiet around them, only the sound of crackling embers in the distance. Seria felt something stir inside her, something she had tried for weeks to silence. Her doubts, once so heavy, now felt lighter. Perhaps, she thought, she had been searching for the wrong things all along. She did not speak of her feelings then. She did not confess her thoughts or reveal her growing admiration. But as she returned to her tent that night, she carried his words with her like a flame in the dark. For the first time, she wondered if her uncertainty about choosing a human was not weakness, but fear of what her heart already wanted. And in the quiet of the night, Seria whispered to herself, "Perhaps the council is wrong. Perhaps strength is not found in bloodlines or traditions, but in the heart that chooses to protect without being asked." Marcus, on the other hand, returned to his post, unaware of the storm he had stirred within the princess. To him, the day had been only another duty fulfilled, another battle fought for the sake of peace. He had no idea that his actions had already begun to change the course of Seria's destiny. After the battle at the border, Seria could no longer ignore what she had seen in Marcus. His courage was not the loud kind, not a banner held high, but a quiet fire that burned steadily. Still, she was cautious. Feelings could deceive, and she could not allow her heart to rule without reason. She was a princess, future queen. Her choice could not be made lightly, so she decided to test him. It began with simple conversations. She invited him to join her during inspections of the guards. At first, Marcus was stiff in her presence, speaking only when spoken to, bowing often as though afraid of breaking the invisible line between royalty and soldier. But Seria noticed something. He never tried to flatter her. Many men, especially nobles, filled her ears with sweet words, hoping to win her favor. Marcus did not. When she asked about training, he spoke about training. When she asked about discipline, he explained calmly. His honesty was almost disarming. One evening, she asked him a question not meant for duty but for the heart. They were walking in the palace garden after a day of drills, the sky painted with the soft colors of sunset. "Tell me, Marcus," she said, "what does loyalty mean to you?" He thought for a moment before answering. "Loyalty means standing beside someone even when there is no gain. It is not about reward. It is about trust." His words stayed with her. Days turned into weeks, and she continued to test him in small ways. She asked him about sacrifice, about what he feared most, about what it meant to belong to a land that was not his by birth. His answers were never perfect, never polished like the speeches of nobles, but they were sincere, and sincerity mattered, more to her than perfect phrases. But Saria's greatest test came unexpectedly. During a council session, one of the elders criticized the humans, saying they could never be trusted with positions of honor. Saria watched Marcus carefully. He was present that day, guarding near the chamber doors. His face remained calm, though the words cut deeply. He did not defend himself, did not argue, though Saria could see in his eyes the weight of restraint. When the session ended, she found him in the corridor. "You heard their words," she said softly. "Yes, Your Highness," he replied. "You said nothing." "There was no need," Marcus said simply. "Arguing would only bring more division. Better to prove them wrong with actions, not words." That answer shook her. In a world where every noble fought to be heard, this soldier chose silence, trusting time and truth to speak for him. She began to realize his strength was not in his sword alone, but in his patience. Still, fear clung to her. She knew if she chose him, many would resist. The council would see it as rebellion, the people as strange. Was she brave enough to take that risk? One night, unable to sleep, Saria walked through the training yard. She found Marcus practicing alone, his blade moving under the moonlight. She watched in silence until he noticed her. Lowering his weapon, he bowed. "Why do you train when others rest?" she asked. "To be ready," he answered. "There is always another battle ahead." Saria stepped closer. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "And if the battle was not for land or for kingdom, but for someone's heart, would you fight then?" Marcus looked at her, his expression steady. "If the heart is worth protecting, then yes, I would fight." In that moment, something broke inside her, the barrier of fear that had kept her uncertain for so long. She saw in him not just a soldier, but the partner she had been waiting for. Someone who would not demand, not pretend, not abandon. Someone who would stand. Saria still kept her decision unspoken, but in her heart, the walls had begun to fall. She knew the path would not be easy, yet she also knew that the truth of her heart was stronger than the weight of tradition.